the Seedling Arks city was unlike any settlement within Frostland we were familiar with. The inhabitants of it were few in number, and more reliant on automatons. It was certainly unlike Winterhome, which didn't have automatons within the crater of it at all. At this point, would be not an issue for the foreseeable future. Well, at least until the piles run out. And at this point, the next priority was to open up the next tier of technology, which would require a considerable amount of wood at this point, which meant the workshops would have to wait. Couldn't be helped. Hothouses would be needed soon, and to work on them would require better research facilities. At this point, it was only a matter of time before a hothouse would be made. Well, if the few that lived in the Seedling Arks city didn't want to starve to death. As for the steam hubs, there was enough for 2 of them, at least. And they would not only heat the arks nearby, but any resource gathering nearby. In the northeast, that would be the gathering posts gathering wood, along with the trees and features. The wood piles, although quite convenient, would be not as long-lasting as the trees would be. As for the law that would be signed this day, it would be for a fighting arena, which should entertain those few here, or rather there. Yes, I don't like the tenses getting mixed up. this point there was enough resources and engineers to form a scout party to search the frozen wastes for the needed plans, along with anything else that might be of use. Only one scout party could be made at this point. None of the others could be spared. The others were needed to gather resources to, well, keep the Seedling Arks city running. As it would appear that at this point there was barely enough to break even when it comes to resources used and resources gathered. Although it was suspected that more would be needed. Even though they were unaware of other settlements still being alive besides theirs. To be honest, even we weren't aware of them until now. Or even what their purpose was. The priority of the leader of the Seedling Arks city at this point was interestingly a gathering post rather than additional research. Clearly more coal was needed to provide for, well, an increasing amount of heat needed, and more would be needed in the days to come. Yes, it would. Although not where the automatons would be working. As at this point, there was only one. Although he wisely didn't dismantle the steam hub near one of the Seedling Arks. That would be useful for, well, a fighting arena. Well, this was convenient. It was on the way to one of the workplaces. Well, it was decided that the next research project would be the hothouse, because food was running out. And when people run out of food, they become discontented, as well as less able to work, and more likely to get sick. And the leader of this city, the city of the Seedling Arks, well, he clearly didn't want that to happen. Although at this point he decided to think long term and have the sawmill researched instead. Well, would be needed to research pretty much everything else that would be needed for the Seedling Ark city's continued survival. So I suppose I could understand what he was thinking at the time, as that would be something I would do. Yes, steel would be in short supply, but it was better than running out of coal. Because without coal, the automatons wouldn't function. The Seedling Arks would freeze. And that city would be doomed. Cold increased, but the Seedling Arks were still warm enough. At least for the next few days. Although more would be needed to keep them that way. This was the day that the hothouse would be needed. Because if food didn't get replenished by this point, they might as well have ended it there and then. Because it would be the same thing in the end. It was at this point that the scouts found some abandoned supplies buried in the snow. Steel and steam cores. Both, indeed, treasures. Although they wouldn't be recalled just yet, as there was still more for the scout party to uncover. And while this was going on, work needed to be done. And a fighting arena needed to be built. Well, even engineers need some entertainment. Although better housing would also be a good thing. Although, at this point, resources wouldn't allow for that. At this point, it was considered a good time for the workshops to have an additional expansion to help speed up research a little. Need to be more expedience when it comes to developing a food supply. One hothouse would be enough to sustain them. 2 at most if there was a need for using automatons to gather it. At least at their current efficiency. The hothouse was researching, and not a moment too soon. Because the people would need food. Without food, the people would starve. A certain revolution in France would attest to that, wouldn't it? In fact, it led to a monarchy and several nobles losing their heads. From what I've read about, it was relatively painless how they lost their heads, but it was still messy. I was never one for that kind of punishment. It wasn't very good at deterring criminal activities, wasn't it? It was more for the terror. And based on history, that doesn't work that well long term. At this point, there were warnings that the Seedling Arks might freeze. Well, that was being remedied at this point. As for the sawmill, one was built to the northeast in preparation when the wood piles would inevitably run out. As for coal, the Seedling Ark city would be moderately well for certainly long enough to have a more permanent solution in place. There was even the consideration of finding a way to use the gathered wood for other things other than construction. As for the usage of steam hubs near workplaces, outside of the work shifts, all those deemed non-essential were shut down. Largely to conserve coal. As for the scout party, they had arrived at their next destination. A broken automaton, which was repaired and the automaton sent back to the Seedling Arks city where it was needed. After that, the scout party travelled to where they were needed. Or rather, to where something that was needed for the city where they came from was located. which was the reason why they were outside in the first place. Then we have the next law for the Seedling Arks city, and it was decided that a pub was needed.
New law in the city.
Yeah. Hard to believe, considering that they needed something to ferment in order to, well, make it a viable option. Because to provide alcoholic beverages, you kind of need something to ferment in order to make that possible. Well, that would soon be remedied. As research on the hothouse was almost complete. The same could not be said, however, for the coal supply, which was hours away from running out. Inexcusable, I know, but it wasn't something that could be solved at this point. The food supply, on the other hand, would be solved. Certainly at the start of the next work shift. Which it was. As for what to do next, well, a steelworks, as more steel would be needed. Although that wouldn't prevent a hothouse being made. Right near a steam hub. In fact, right next to the other building with plants in it. Just not the ones that needed to be eaten. Yes, steam cores were valuable, which is why they were needed for the hothouse. Well, one of them anyway.
Get going. Time to earn your bread.
Day 5 would be when the food supply issues would be solved. As for the steel supply issues, well, it would depend on how long the research for the steelworks would take. Then there was also the problem with coal.